Hey guys, your friend Spencer here. Me and Mr. Gizmo just got back from the gym where we just spent 2 glorious hours lifting weights, drinking protein shakes, acting condescending, and making fun of beta males. It was a great time, and we had a good pump, didn't we, Mr. Gizmo? Got a good pump going, and it was a wonderful time. Had a great time. On the way back, we had a typical conversation that you would have with your dog. We're talking about our favorite parks that we go to, talk about Keynesian economics, and also we were talking about the fact that we don't understand why everybody gets so upset that the typical striker-fired weapon does not have an external safety. We don't understand that, but that's really what we were talking about. And it dawned on us, and Mr. Gizmo brought this up, it dawned on us that we feel like the average person today is not educated properly on communism and what communism is. And so we're going to try to bring some information to you. We have some video footage from the 60s that we want to bring your way and show you and educate you on communism. Now, I've got this book right here, just got it off Amazon, pretty cool little book called The Devil and Karl Marx. And we're going to dig into this, but I was just thumbing through this book today, and here is a letter that was written to Karl Marx by his father. And I want to read this letter to you, then we'll get into the video together. And it says, "At times my heart delights in thinking of you and your future, and yet at times I cannot rid myself of ideas which arouse in me sad forebodings and fear when I am struck as if by lightning by the thoughts is in your heart in accord with your head and your talents. Has it room for the earthly but gentler sentiments which in this veil of sorrow are so essentially consoling for a man of feeling? And since that heart is obviously animated and governed by a demon not granted to all men, is that demon heavenly or Faustian?" And his own father said, "I think there's a demon in you, son." And he writ that to this man, the father of Marxism, as we call. And by the way, your BLM people are trained Marxist demonism. And so we just had a little freedom spell, and we thought we would help educate the masses on what communism is and just show you some raw video footage from the past, educating people on this very topic. That's what we want to do. Isn't that right, Mr. Gizmo? Did you have a good day at the gym? You got a good PR on the deadlift today. So proud of you. Good job. So with that, we're going to go to the video footage now, and God bless you. Hope you take the time to watch all of this. Is very interesting stuff.
What is communism? I've been on the inside of communism. I still have contacts. From this knowledge, I tell you as simply and seriously as I know how. Communism is a lying, dirty, shrewd, godless, murderous, determined, as J. Edgar Hoover says, a criminal conspiracy. I'm choosing these words deliberately. As I travel around, I still have people say, "Well, why are you so hard on communists? They're just another political party like any other, and a poor minority at that, and so misunderstood." Well, we don't want them misunderstood, and that's why we're making this film. And that's why I say they are lying, dirty, shrewd, godless, murderous, determined, and it is not an American political party like any other. It's an outlawed organization, taking its orders and instructions from another government to do everything possible to destroy our government. It's an international criminal conspiracy. In years to come, if democracy falls, historians are going to look back on this time in which we are now living, and they're going to say, how could any free and intelligent people living in a country like America let a gang of vicious outsiders come in and take over? Well, of course, the only answer would be that most Americans didn't realize or couldn't believe until it was too late that communists are what they are. That's why I want to analyze those 3, 6, 9 words. And if you'll follow me, I'll guarantee that 10 minutes from now, a lot of you are going to have a new understanding of communism. Now, let's see if that isn't so. We start with lying. People wonder, how can a communist look you in the eye and tell one bare-faced lie after another with a straight face, the way Gromyko did with President Kennedy on Cuba? Well, the explanation is simple. lying doesn't mean the same thing to a real communist that it means to you and me. For 9 years, I walked streets like this to meet with other party members down dark hallways, behind closed doors, constantly changing meeting places to avoid suspicion. In musty attics or moldy basement rooms like this. We were taught by our communist leaders and ordered to believe that truth is anything that will promote communism. Therefore, nothing is a lie if it helps the party. So the communists use the lie as a weapon, a shield, and a tool. When you keep that in mind, at last you begin to understand them. When a smiling Khrushchev says the Russians in Cuba are technicians and farm helpers, well, you can suspect there are soldiers too. And when he says only defensive weapons were sent, well, you can suspect there are also intercontinental missiles and bombers. And when he says now they removed them all, well, what do you think? Since it is their sworn duty to tell us whatever will best serve their cause, we should always suspect they are lying. Lying is one of their best tools for playing dirty. Dirty, mean, despicable, ruthless. Slander, blackmail, corruption of character, to stock and trade. They recognize no such things as human dignity or any rights of the individual. Class hatred and open class warfare are their specialty. If they can get a few people killed, well, so much the better. As some were killed in this communist-incited race riot. At this, they are not only dirty, but they are oh so shrewd. Give them credit. They know Americans better than most Americans know communists. They are shrewd with words. How many Americans would volunteer for the Communist Army? Yet, many enlisted when it was called the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and went off to fight and die with the communists in the Spanish Civil War. When, in 1943, for tactical reasons, the Communist Party eliminated the Young Communist League, it instantly became the American Youth for Democracy. They don't say, give us the right to operate subversively in our midst. They say, defend the Bill of Rights. They don't call their campaign against our Internal Security Act by that name. They used the Citizens Committee for Constitutional Liberties and the American Committee for the Protection of Foreign Bond. There's the American League for Peace and Democracy, and so on. Well, that last mouthful combines a number of words our people like. Peace, democracy, even the American League. But this is only a drop in the bucket. The communists are past masters at getting other people to do their dirty work for them. They take over organization after organization in America in just 2 steps: infiltration and agitation. This is what they work at day and night. This is what accounts for much of their success. You want a shocker? Well, in that list up there, in place of those thinly veiled commie fronts, let's substitute some other names, respectable names, that have been infiltrated to a greater or lesser degree. I hope you are more than shocked. I hope you are aroused. Because we have it on no less authority than J. Edgar Hoover that communists and fellow travelers have penetrated every category up there, and more. Well, you'll think a few maybe, but it doesn't take many. It has been tragically proven time and again that one dedicated communist in a key spot, such as Alger Hiss in the State Department, or Harry Dexter White in the Treasury Department, or in any position to influence command decisions, can wreck our hopes, slaughter our soldiers, and weaken our nation. But we must hurry on. I've said these fellows are lying, dirty, shrewd, and I say they are godless. To me, this is perhaps the most frightening word of all, because it accounts for every other bad word that describes them. When the Reds tear down their churches or turn them into common warehouses, when they torture and kill their priests, ministers, and rabbis, we are horrified, yes. But why are we surprised? What do you expect of a people who say the church is our enemy and must be destroyed? No one can be a true communist and hold any religious convictions. I say to you, it is bad to be irreligious, but it is far worse to be anti-religious. It is reprehensible to be immoral, but it is horrifying to be unmoral. To them, any wrong they do is right. Well, these are some of the more frightening facts we must understand if we are going to understand communism, and we'd better understand it. My grandmother used to say, what you don't know won't hurt you. But today, what you don't know can kill you, and I mean that literally. The communists are murderers. Of course, they don't call it that. Whether they're casually shooting individuals who get in their way, or as in the Katyn Forest Massacre in 1940, maliciously executing 15,000 Polish officers and intellectuals. In the words of an official United States Congressional Committee, the committee unanimously agrees that its investigation proves conclusively and irrevocably the Soviets' NKVD, the People's Commissariat of Internal Affairs, committed this massacre, a calculated plot to eliminate all Polish leaders who subsequently would have opposed the Soviets' plan for communizing Poland. This was plotted shortly after the Soviets' treacherous invasion of Poland in the fall of 1939. We'll not prolong these gruesome scenes taken from this official hearing and report of the United States Congressional Committee, but while you're recoiling from this sight, save a little shudder for yourself. Why? Because this is part of what is planned for you. Yes, the communists have plans for you. As soon as they're in power, they will arrest many of you, seize your property. If you're important enough, they will shoot you, along with all community leaders. The rest of you will be regimented, and some of you forced into slave labor. This is the planned, plotted, tested program they are determined to execute in this country, as they already have in many others. Don't think for a minute their program is on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. When you see where the Reds have grabbed a new slice of territory here or a whole nation there, well, don't tranquilize yourself with the thought that this will satisfy them. Every move they make, every piece of ground they gobble up, every labor union, every government agency, every local organization they infiltrate in this country is just one more step towards their main goal, which is America and you. Occasionally they get their setbacks, but don't let a few defeats raise your hopes any. Even the setbacks are part of their overall strategy. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Cuba is a classic illustration. Remember this news photo? Castro and Khrushchev hugging each other? We thought it a little ridiculous at the time, rather disgusting, and let it go at that. The next thing we know, the Russians put missiles and bombers on the island. Then we suddenly come to life and say, wait a minute, back up there. So they take 1 step back. They make a show of removal. But see what they still gain in the maneuver? We think we won a victory. So we relax. And they end up with who knows how many missiles and bases and military personnel established 90 miles off our coast. Well, that's the story of our experience with the communists. When we get mad enough to call a halt to something, they back up and say, okay, don't get excited, let's coexist. So we relax again. We give them a chance to consolidate their gains, and then they come in with a new sneak punch. What it all boils down to is just what J. Edgar Hoover said. It's the greatest danger we face in the world today. Well, I promised you 10 minutes ago that by this time you would have a new understanding of communism. Too long we have been thinking of communists as misguided but human beings with humane feelings and responses. What we have just shown you exposes them for what they really are: lying, dirty, shrewd, godless, determined, and international criminal conspiracy. This is the true nature of the enemy. This is communism.
Early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. We mustn't kid ourselves into thinking that the communists have placed their agitators only into the black communities. They're working both sides of the street. They want hatred, violence, and bloodshed between the races, and they don't care how they get it or whom they use, even children if necessary. Here is a book that I think ought to be in every home library. It's entitled Color, Communism, and Common Sense by Manning Johnson. He joined the party as a young man because he honestly believed that the communists were trying to improve the conditions of his people. He was a dedicated communist, and eventually he rose to one of the highest ranks. But after many years, he discovered that instead they were merely planning to use his people in a bloody revolution to destroy America. And when he woke up to this, he dropped out of the party and devoted the rest of his life trying to alert his fellow citizens of all races to the true nature of the Communist Party as he knew it to be from the inside. Manning Johnson said, "Black rebellion was what Moscow wanted. Bloody racial conflict would split America. During the confusion, demoralization and panic would set in. Then finally the Reds say, workers stop work. Many of them seize arms by attacking arsenals. Street fights become frequent. Under the leadership of the Communist Party, the workers organize revolutionary committees to be in command of the uprising. Armed workers seize the principal government offices, invade the residences of the president and his cabinet members, arrest them, declare the old regime abolished, establish their own power." Now, here is a piece of vicious communist propaganda that perhaps some of you have seen. It's called The Crusader. It's written by Robert F. Williams, one of the organizers of the Revolutionary Action Movement. In this issue of The Crusader, the communists call not only for extensive chaos within the cities, but for putting to the torch every village, every forest, every field, and every barn. The plan is for raging fires from one city to the next. The reason? Well, first, there's the value of sheer destruction. Secondly, it would force us to deploy our defenses and rescue units over the widest possible area. The communists point out that as long as our police and National Guard remain concentrated, they're invincible. But if they can be forced to spread out over the entire city and into the countryside as well, then they can be picked off from ambush one by one. And the third value of massive fire to the communists is psychological. The average American, they say, soft and decadent, when he sees billows of black smoke rising from one horizon to the other, when at night the only light he has to see by is the flickering red from flames leaping into the sky, he'll become paralyzed with fear and panic. He'll run away and hide and do nothing to interfere with the guerrilla bands as they strike at the community's power centers. The Crusader explains how to set up sniper units in crowded metropolitan areas, how to manufacture jumbo Molotov cocktails, the gallon jug size, and how to mix the gasoline with certain ingredients to make it burn like napalm, how to pour gasoline into utility manholes in the streets to set fire to the main telephone cables, how to put sulfur tips from matches into air conditioning units and blow up large buildings, how to ignite gas mains and oil storage tanks. It explains how radio-controlled model airplanes can be used to fly explosive charges over heavily guarded fences into gasoline storage areas or munition stockpiles. It even calls for infiltration into the National Guard units, revolutionaries posing as non-militants for the purpose of getting free military training and for gaining access to critical military supplies and heavy weapons. And then, finally, Robert Williams says this: any all-out minority revolution must create a state of crisis wherein almost all of the male population would be forced to remain in their homes to protect their property and families. The middle class is very large, but it is not accustomed to deprivation and terror. Because of its affluence, it has waxed soft. It has no stomach for massive fire, blood, and violence. The motive force behind its life drive is its endless pursuit of prestige, conspicuous consumption, and sensual pleasure. A few years of violent, sporadic, and highly destructive uprisings will set the stage for the grand finale. After the stage is properly set through protracted struggle, America could be brought to her knees in 90 days of highly organized, fierce fighting, sabotage, and massive firestorm. Ladies and gentlemen, the plans and preparations for a communist revolution of force and violence are far advanced. The organization behind these preparations has almost unlimited financial resources, and it provides both training and leadership based upon years of experience in many other countries. Our enemies are deadly serious about their task, and it's nothing short of national suicide for us to continue to ignore their plans and their progress. The violent revolution becomes of primary value to the communists to the extent to which it can be used to condition the masses psychologically to accept the non-violent revolution, which is offered supposedly as the only alternative. Hoping to avoid further violence and bloodshed, the public is to be pressured into accepting measures that will move the country gradually and legally toward communism, but without calling it that. The strategy of the proletarian revolution calls for the quiet conversion of our government into a communist regime, but under the banner of socialism. Well, what is socialism? All right, let's define it. According to the dictionary, socialism is a political concept based upon the principle of government ownership and control of property, the means of production, and the avenues of commerce. Under socialism, those who run the government, and the communists are confident that in America they eventually will be the ones who do so, those who run the government will know who is to get something and who has to wait, and that represents control over human beings. What has all this to do with the communist revolution in America? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has everything to do with it, because the building of socialism is the communist revolution in America. It represents the process whereby our country can be moved gradually toward communism without the people even being aware of it. No matter what grievance we may have, real or imagined, no matter what national problems we may face, the communists seize upon these as excuses to build socialism. They have one and only one solution for all problems: more government, and then more and more until it's total government. And forgive me for saying it one more time, total government is communism.
Mr. Gizmo, after watching that, do you want to be a communist? Yeah, I didn't think so. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless you.